You never expect to be humiliated by family, especially not while standing in front of 150 guests in a designer dress you couldn't afford. And you definitely don't expect it to come with a PowerPoint. My name is Rachel. I'm 29 and last weekend was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My engagement party. My fiancé Daniel and I had been together for 4 years. He's thoughtful, hilarious, and the only person who's ever made me feel safe. He's also the baby brother of Caroline, the woman who, with a single speech, torched my dignity and left me questioning everything about my future. To understand what happened, you need to know this. Caroline never liked me. She pretended to, of course. Polite smiles, the occasional brunch invitation, a curated Instagram comment here and there. But behind those interactions was a wall I could never get through. She never opened up to me, never asked me real questions. Always slightly distant, like I was a guest at a party she hadn't invited me to but was too well-mannered to kick out. I chalked it up to personality differences. She's type A super polished corporate powerhouse. I'm more creative, emotionally messy, a bit impulsive. We weren't meant to be best friends and I was okay with that. Until I made the mistake of giving her the microphone. It was Daniel's idea, actually. Caroline's great at public speaking, he said. Let's have her say a few words. Like a toast. She loves that stuff. I hesitated. Something in my gut twisted. But then I thought, this is me being paranoid. Overthinking. It's just a toast. So I said yes. We rented out this gorgeous rooftop venue in downtown LA. String lights, jazz quartet, little sliders served on marble trays. I spent months planning. My savings account, my emergency fund, even my tax return, all of it went into that party. I'm not proud of the financial decisions I made, but I wanted one perfect night to celebrate the start of forever. The night was dreamy at first. People laughed. The champagne flowed. My mom even hugged Daniel without her usual icy tone. Then Caroline stood up. She wore a sleek navy jumpsuit and held the microphone like she was about to deliver a TED Talk. Thank you everyone for being here, she began smoothly. This is such a beautiful celebration. Rachel, you did an incredible job with the decorations. Pause. Applause. I smiled from across the room. Then she said, and now I'd like to take a moment to talk about the woman my brother is marrying. Because I think there are some things we should all be clear on before she becomes part of our family. People chuckled nervously. I felt the air shift. She clicked a remote. A screen lit up behind her. The things Rachel won't tell you. My blood went cold. She started reading from a list. She lied about finishing college. She said she had a degree from UCLA, but she dropped out after 2 semesters. She once got fired from a nanny job because she left a toddler at a mall play area for 40 minutes while she ran an errand. She asked my brother to put her name on the lease only 2 months into dating and told him it was because she was testing his loyalty. The room was silent. People stared at me. My dad looked horrified. My fiancé's face had gone pale. She kept going. She used to talk about how rich Daniel's family was to her friends, calling it her exit strategy. I know this because one of her old roommates reached out to me. Hi Madison, if you're watching from New York. She waved at the camera. I couldn't breathe. I was rooted in place. Frozen. After 2 minutes, Daniel finally stood up and grabbed the mic. Caroline, what the hell is wrong with you? She turned to him, still composed. I'm just trying to protect you. The rest of the night was chaos. People left early. The cake was never cut. I locked myself in the bathroom and sobbed until my false lashes peeled off. Daniel came in eventually. Sat on the floor next to me. She ambushed me, I whispered. You believe me, right? He didn't answer immediately. And that pause? That hesitation? It sliced deeper than anything Caroline had said. The twist? 3 days later, Daniel told me he wanted to postpone the wedding. Just to process everything, he said. I need to figure out who to believe. That was when I knew Caroline hadn't just planted a seed of doubt in Daniel that might never go away. But here's the part you're not expecting. The next morning, I got a call from Caroline. I didn't do it to hurt you, she said. I did it because I've been where you are. I married someone who lied to me, who drained me. I swore I'd never let that happen to someone I loved again. I laughed through my tears. So you thought ruining my life was a kindness? She went quiet. No. I thought maybe you'd finally tell the truth. Then she hung up. But the truth is, not everything she said was false. I did drop out of college. I did get fired from that nanny job, but it wasn't what she made it sound like. The kid's mom was 2 hours late, and I ran across the street for diapers. It wasn't responsible, I know, but it wasn't malicious. I asked Daniel to put me on the lease because my old apartment had a mold issue, and I needed to move fast. I panicked. I framed it wrong. And yes, I joked about his family's money once. During a girls' night, wine drunk, when I said, well, at least if he dumps me, I'll have gotten a taste of the good life. It was a joke. A dumb one. But when you stack up half-truths, they start to look like lies. So now I'm sitting here in my empty apartment, the glitter from the party still stuck to my heels, wondering if I've lost everything because I wasn't honest enough or because someone who claimed to love their brother decided to play judge, jury, and executioner. And the worst part? I'm not even sure who the real villain is anymore. The thing about public humiliation is that it lingers. You don't just move on from it. You relive it. At 2 a.m., at red lights in the dressing room while trying on jeans you don't even like. It creeps up, slow and sticky, wrapping itself around your confidence like mold on bread. After the party, everything cracked. Daniel wasn't cruel. He didn't leave. But he pulled away. His good morning texts got shorter. His kisses colder. He spent more time at work. And when we were home, there was a look in his eyes that I couldn't shake, the look of someone reevaluating a decision they once felt sure about. And Caroline? She vanished. No apology. No text. No call to Daniel explaining herself. Just silence, like a ghost that had done its haunting and moved on. I stayed with my friend Lila for a week. She was the first person to wrap her arms around me and whisper, that was psychotic. She poured wine like medicine and replayed Caroline's speech with me, frame by horrifying frame, until I could recite it from memory. On the 5th night, Lila asked, why do you think she really did it? I hesitated. She said she was trying to protect Daniel. Lila snorted. No. This wasn't about protection. That was punishment. But for what? I didn't have an answer. Yet. That weekend, Daniel and I met at a cafe. Neutral territory. He looked tired. He ordered black coffee. Something he only does when he's trying to feel in control. I need to know something, he said after a long pause. Is any of what she said true? I didn't lie. I told him the whole story. Every flawed, fumbling, desperate decision. I cried through it, not for pity, but because it hurt to strip down that much and still not know if it would be enough. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he looked at me like he was seeing a stranger. That's a lot, he said quietly. I felt my spine curl in on itself. I know. He sighed. I just wish you had told me sooner. I wanted to scream. I didn't know I needed to confess every insecurity before I could be considered worthy. Instead, I said, I didn't think those things defined me. He looked away. Maybe they don't. But hiding them made it worse. We didn't break up, not officially. But he stopped making wedding plans. He stopped saying we. Everything became I. I moved out 2 weeks later. And that should have been the end. A tragic story of love lost to family sabotage. But life had one more twist for me. It came in the form of an unexpected email. From Riley, Caroline's ex-husband. Subject line, you don't know me, but I think you need to see this. I opened it in a daze. The message was short. Hi, Rachel. I'm not sure what's going on between you and Caroline, but I saw the video of the engagement party. I recognized that tone. The performance. The cruelty. She did something similar to me before our divorce. I have proof. If you're ready to hear the whole story, I'm happy to talk. Riley. My fingers shook. I'd never even met Riley. Caroline barely talked about him, other than to say he was a mistake she corrected in time. We met for coffee 2 days later. He was calm, measured, not bitter, just tired. She has this way of rewriting history, he said, stirring his tea. When she's done with someone, she doesn't just leave. She dismantles them. Publicly, if possible. He slid a flash drive across the table. This has everything. Emails, audio recordings, even a therapy session transcript where she admitted she exaggerated the abuse to win the divorce settlement. I stared at him. Why are you giving this to me? He looked at me with a flicker of sadness. Because I wish someone had warned me. I took the drive home. not knowing if I was about to burn down a bridge or light my way out of hell. That night I listened. Caroline in her own voice, telling a friend she only married Riley because he looked good in holiday photos. Caroline laughing about planting stories in his HR file. Caroline saying if I'm not in control I start to unravel. So I control everyone. My heart thudded in my chest. This wasn't about me. Not really. This was a pattern. A system. A compulsion to expose others in order to protect herself from her own vulnerabilities. Suddenly, her speech at the party wasn't just about my flaws, it was a mirror. She was showing the world what she feared being accused of. And the real kicker? Riley showed me an email from Caroline to a mutual friend, sent the day before my engagement party. In it, she wrote, "I'm going to finally teach that girl a lesson. She's been playing Cinderella long enough. Let's see how she does when the glass slipper breaks." I sat there shaking, phone clutched in my hand, a scream caught in my throat. This wasn't concern. This was revenge. For what I didn't know. Maybe for loving Daniel in a way she never could. Maybe for being messy, loud, vulnerable in a family that prized perfection. Maybe just for existing. The next day I sent Daniel the files. No message. Just the evidence. He didn't respond right away. But 3 days later he showed up at my door. He looked wrecked. "I didn't want to believe it," he said. "But I listened to everything. All of it. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner." I wanted to hug him. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to cry. Instead I asked, "Now that you know, what do you want to do?" He said, "I want to start over. With honesty. With you." But here's the twist you might not expect. I said no. Because trust, once broken like that, doesn't return with an apology. And love, no matter how strong, can't survive in a home where you have to defend your humanity. I needed peace, not repair. And I knew I'd never have peace in a family that applauded my humiliation then hesitated to question the one holding the mic. Caroline never apologized. I doubt she ever will. But I walked away from that whole disaster with something she'll never understand. Freedom. The freedom of living in the truth. The freedom of knowing the worst thing already happened and I survived. And the freedom to plan a future where no one holds a microphone to my past ever again. It's funny how people assume the drama ends when the microphone goes silent. The truth? That microphone echoed long after the last guest shuffled out of the ballroom, past the wilting floral arches and uneaten tiramisu. It followed me into job interviews, family brunches, therapy sessions, and every dream I had about walking down the aisle. 3 months after the party, I was living in a new apartment with second-hand furniture, a shelf of unopened wedding catalogs, and a very firm rule: no more contact with the Reynolds family. And then my mother got sick. Stage 2 lymphoma. Not the worst-case scenario, but not early enough to ignore. I was her only child, and she needed rides to chemo, help with her meds, someone to sit beside her during the hours-long infusions when the hospital TVs played muted reruns of Law and Order. And of course, she still loved Daniel. Still saw him as the man I was meant to be with. "You two just hit a rough patch," she said gently one afternoon, her skin pale and her scarf slipping back from her head. "That girl, his sister, she'll come around eventually." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout that Caroline didn't just cause a rough patch, she dropped a nuclear bomb on my life and then walked away without looking back. But instead, I just said, "Let's focus on you right now." Then came the phone call. Daniel. Voice cautious. Hesitant. "Rachel. Mom's in town. She wants to talk to you." My heart immediately sprinted into my throat. "Your mom?" "Yes," he said. She saw the video. Caroline never told her what happened. She only found out because someone at church showed it to her, thinking she'd already seen it. I stayed silent. "She's not okay with what Caroline did," Daniel continued. "She wants to apologize. In person. And bringing my dad too." I should have said no. I should have kept my wall up. But something cracked in me when he added softly, "She says she owes you a proper thank you for loving me even when our family didn't make it easy." So I agreed. We met at a quiet restaurant on the outskirts of town, a place with low lighting and the kind of polite jazz that makes even long silences feel dignified. Daniel's mom, Ellen, hugged me the moment she saw me. Tight. No pretense. Her eyes were rimmed red before we even sat down. "I watched that video 5 times, she said, her voice shaking. "And every time I got angrier. I didn't raise my daughter to be that cruel. I didn't know what to say. I just looked at her, waiting. Ellen reached into her bag and pulled out a small box wrapped in gold foil paper. I bought this for you when you and Daniel got engaged, she said. I was going to give it to you at the rehearsal dinner. Obviously, that never happened. I opened it slowly. Inside was a delicate sapphire pendant. Not flashy, elegant, subtle. My birthstone. I looked at her in confusion. I had it custom-made, she said. Because you're not just another fiancé to me. You were the first person who made my son truly seen. And I never thanked you for that. Tears burned in my eyes. We talked for hours. Her husband Daniel's father apologized too, less emotionally, but just as sincerely. He admitted they'd enabled Caroline for years, brushing off her sharp tongue as wit or protectiveness. But that night, he said, we saw who she really is. They didn't ask me to forgive her. They just acknowledged the damage. And something about that broke the dam inside me. Not just about Caroline, but about the way I'd carried myself for years. The way I'd quietly adjusted to discomfort, softened my anger, swallowed my pride, always trying to keep the peace in rooms that were already burning down. After dinner, Ellen held my hand. You don't have to come back to us, she said. But I hope you know. We miss you. We miss the way the house felt when you were in it. It was the first time in months that I felt like maybe I hadn't been the villain in someone's story. A week later, Caroline emailed me. Subject line, let's talk. No apology in the body. Just one sentence. We both know you're not innocent either. I didn't respond. Because the truth is I am guilty. Guilty of letting things slide for too long. Of hoping love would be enough to protect me from manipulation. Of believing that being the bigger person was the same thing as being safe. But I wasn't her pawn anymore. I didn't owe her closure. Instead, I started writing. Not just journaling, really writing. Essays. Articles. Stories. I poured every ounce of pain, confusion, shame, and grit into my keyboard. A friend of mine worked at a women's magazine and published one of my essays, When the Bully Wears a Bridesmaid Dress. It went viral. Suddenly, my inbox was full of strangers sharing their own horror stories, weddings ruined, reputations shattered, lives upended by people who masked cruelty as honesty. It was liberating. I wasn't alone. I wasn't crazy. I was just the one who finally said it out loud. Daniel called me again. Not to beg, just to say, I read your piece. I'm proud of you. And that meant something. But I didn't ask if he was dating anyone. I didn't offer to meet for coffee. Because as much as I loved him, some fractures don't disappear. They become fault lines. Quiet. Dormant. Waiting for the next tremor. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. I started a podcast, The Shattered Glass Slipper. A place for women to tell their stories. No sugarcoating. No fake forgiveness. Just raw, real truth. And people listened. A woman from Colorado shared how her maid of honor announced her miscarriage at her bridal shower. A woman from Chicago said her mother-in-law handed out prenups at the rehearsal dinner. A nurse from Boston cried as she told me how her sister blackmailed her out of her own wedding speech. It was heartbreaking. Empowering. And slowly, piece by piece, it made me whole again. My mother beat cancer. She rang the bell on her final day of chemo, and we threw her a life party with homemade cupcakes and bad karaoke. She sang Celine Dion with a shaky voice and a fire in her eyes. Afterwards, she pulled me aside and said, "Whatever you lost, you got something bigger in return." She was right. I lost the fairy tale, but I got the truth. And I'll take that every time. I used to think redemption looked like a formal apology. A teary face across a table. A public retraction. A rewritten narrative that put me back in the center, framed as the good one. But that's not what healing actually looks like. Sometimes it looks like walking past a bakery where you once had cake tastings with your ex and not flinching. Sometimes it's not thinking about the ruined party every time someone says engagement. And sometimes it's publishing a book that lays everything bare. I signed the deal 10 months after the engagement imploded. The manuscript had been sitting in my Google Docs, raw and tangled. My editor at the magazine pushed me to submit it. We didn't expect the bidding war. Turns out, the world is hungry for the truth behind curated Instagram proposals and picture-perfect Pinterest weddings. The title? 2 minutes and a microphone. The subtitle? Surviving the party that almost erased me. Caroline, of course, found out. She sent me a legal threat. A cease and desist drafted in the kind of aggressive legalese that practically spit in your face through the page. But we'd been careful. I changed names, dates, even cities. Besides, she'd already outed herself when she tried to deny it on her social media and got blasted by dozens of commenters saying, "We saw the video, Caroline. Sit down." I didn't respond. She never sued. Instead, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she left her job at the marketing firm, took a break, deleted all her public accounts. And Daniel? He came to my book signing. I didn't know he would. Didn't expect it. But there he was standing in the back of the line holding a copy of the book like it was glass in his hands. When he got to the front, he didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me with that complicated expression you only get when love and regret sit too close together. "I read every word," he said finally. "Twice." I smiled gently. "Thank you. You deserved so much better than what happened that night," he said. Then he handed me a note. Folded. Plain. I didn't open it until hours later, after the signing was over and I was alone in my hotel room. Inside, he'd written, "I'm not asking for another chance. But I hope, one day, someone gives you everything you gave to me without ever making you apologize for it." I cried then. Not because I wanted him back, but because someone had finally seen all of it. The wait, the silence, the work. And they didn't try to twist it into something more palatable. They just honored it. That spring, I was invited to speak at a national women's conference. They put me on a panel called "Burn It Down and Build It Better." I shared the story, not just the party, but the aftermath. The gaslighting. The erasure. The quiet power of reclaiming the narrative. Women came up to me afterward with tears in their eyes, hugging me like I'd said something they'd been waiting their whole lives to hear. I even met a woman who said my story gave her the courage to leave a toxic family business where her brother routinely humiliated her in front of clients. "You reminded me that sometimes walking away isn't losing," she said. "It's survival." Now, a year later, I'm living in a small house by the lake. My mother visits often. She's still in remission. Her laugh is louder now. Her steps lighter. We cook together. We talk. Sometimes we reread my book and laugh at how wild it all was. And every once in a while, someone will DM me or send an email. "Thank you for telling the truth." Because that's the part Caroline never understood. The truth doesn't go away just because it's inconvenient. It grows roots. And in the right light, it blooms. Do I regret that party? Yes. I regret the money, the humiliation, the way I begged Daniel with my eyes while Caroline destroyed me under fairy lights and faux elegance. But I don't regret what came after. I don't regret the way I stood up when the wreckage cleared and said, "This doesn't end here." I don't regret turning the worst night of my life into a beginning. And I definitely don't regret the woman I became when I finally stopped trying to make myself small enough to fit into other people's expectations. If you're reading this, if you're the bride who got blindsided, the daughter who got gaslit, the woman who got smeared and silenced, I hope you know something. You are allowed to tell your story, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. Even if they deny it. Even if they say, "That's not how I remember it." Tell it anyway. Because silence was never your debt to pay. And survival? That's the loudest mic drop of all.